The message arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The kind of message you read once, then read again, because your brain refuses to believe what your eyes have just seen. Don't come to the wedding. You are too poor. You will embarrass the family. It was from my mother. My own mother had just uninvited me from my sister's wedding. Not because of an emergency. Not because there was a mistake, but because, in her view, I didn't have enough money to be there. As if poverty were a contagious disease that could infect the family photos. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the phone with trembling hands. The words burned on the screen. Too poor. Embarrass the family. Every word was a sharp blade, cutting deeper than any fight we'd ever had. And believe me, we've had plenty of fights. But this was different. This wasn't anger. This was shame. She was ashamed of me. Her own daughter. The child she brought into the world, whom she was supposed to protect and love unconditionally. To her, I was a stain on the family reputation. A dirty secret that needed to be hidden from the well-dressed guests and professional cameras. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces in that moment. Not for the first time, to be honest. But this time felt final. Definitive. As if she had finally said out loud what she had always thought in silence. Because, you see, this wasn't the first rejection. Far from it. In our family, love always came with conditions, with price tags, with expectations that shifted as your bank account grew or shrank. I grew up watching this, living this, breathing this toxic atmosphere where your worth as a person was measured by the car you drove, the clothes you wore, the neighborhood you lived in. My sister? She was always the favorite daughter, the one who did everything right. Married a rich man, lives in a 3-story house, wears designer clothes, and vacations in Dubai. She is living proof that my mother did a good job. She is the trophy my mother shows off to her friends at the country club. And me? I'm the failure. The project that didn't work out. The daughter who insists on living with dignity instead of selling herself for social status. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time, many years ago, when we were a normal family. Before the obsession with status consumed my mother like a silent cancer. Before she turned into this woman I barely recognize. Before every conversation became a competition. Every family dinner turning into a veiled battlefield of passive-aggressive comments and painful comparisons. I remember the change. It was gradual, then sudden, like boiling water. You don't notice the heat rising degree by degree until suddenly it's scalding your skin. It started after the divorce. When my father left home, taking half the assets and all the financial security my mother had built her identity on. She panicked. Not the normal emotional panic of a broken heart, but an existential panic. As if, without the money and status of the marriage, she ceased to exist. That was when the poison set in. She became obsessed with appearances, with what others thought, with keeping up the facade of success, even when everything was crumbling inside. Every decision began to be filtered through a single question. What will people think? And we, her daughters, became extensions of that obsession. My sister embraced it completely. I resisted, and that, in my mother's eyes, turned me into the family disappointment. Now, sitting there with that cruel message glowing on my phone screen, I realized something. I realized I was tired. So deeply tired of fighting for crumbs of affection. Tired of proving myself. Tired of waiting for her to wake up one day and remember that I am her daughter. Not a financial asset that failed to appreciate. My life isn't glamorous. I won't lie about that. I work hard. Very hard. 2 jobs, actually. In the morning, I'm an administrative assistant at a small accounting firm. At night, I freelance as a graphic designer. Not for dreams of an artistic career, but because bills don't pay themselves. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. There's nothing wrong with it. It's clean, safe, and it's mine. I pay my own rent. I buy my own food. I take care of my own life. I'm proud of that. Or at least I was. Until my mother made me feel like my humble independence was something shameful. But here's the truth she never wanted to accept. I am resilient. I learned to survive. I learned that dignity doesn't come from the size of your house or the brand of your car. I learned that the hard way, through years of subtle rejection and painful comparisons. And yet, despite everything, I still showed up. I still called. I still tried to maintain some connection with the woman who used to be my mother. Because deep down, stupid and pathetic as it may seem, I still had hope. Hope that one day she would wake up. Hope that maternal love would overcome the obsession with status. That message killed that hope. Finally, completely. Don't come to the wedding. You are too poor. I reread the words until they lost their meaning. Until they became just symbols on the screen. Until the initial pain turned into something colder. Harder. Anger, perhaps. Or determination. Or both. And then I thought of something I shouldn't. Something ironic. Something almost funny because it was so absurd. I thought about my mother's ex-husband. Not my father. The other one. The man she loved after the divorce. The man who broke her heart 20 years ago and, in many people's eyes, started this downward spiral of obsession with status and external validation. Ricardo. I was just a teenager when they dated. I remember him vaguely. A quiet, gentle man who treated my mother with a tenderness my father never showed. But he wasn't rich enough. He didn't have the social prestige she thought she deserved. So she left him. She chose status over love. And she's regretted it ever since. Though she'd never admit it out loud. Ricardo disappeared from our lives after the breakup. No drama, no confrontations. He was just gone. And my mother built even higher walls around her heart, deciding that if love couldn't bring status, then status would be her new love. But here's what my mother didn't know. What no one in the family knew. Ricardo came back into my life 3 months ago. Not on purpose. Not with some dramatic plan for revenge or reconnection. It was accidental. I bumped into him at a coffee shop. We talked. Coffee turned into lunch. Lunch turned into regular conversations. And slowly, quietly, he became something important. Not romantically. God, no. But like a father figure I never really had. Like a mentor. Like someone who saw value in me beyond my bank balance. He didn't know about my family's toxicity. Not yet. I kept those stories to myself, too ashamed to admit that my own mother treated me like a failed investment. But now, holding this phone, reading this rejection text for the 100th time, something shifted inside me. Because Ricardo had something. Something he told me just 2 weeks ago, sworn to secrecy. Something that, if my mother knew, would completely destroy her carefully constructed world of appearances and judgments. And suddenly, sitting there in the dim light of my humble apartment, I realized something. I realized that the last person I expected to change my life was the very man who broke my mother's heart 20 years ago. The man she discarded for not being rich enough. The man who disappeared in silence, taking with him secrets no one imagined. Ricardo wasn't that quiet, unprestigious man anymore. Things had changed, drastically, and I was about to find out exactly how much. But in that moment, all I knew was this. My mother called me too poor to attend my sister's wedding. She told me to stay away so as not to embarrass the family with my humble presence. And something inside me, something that had been building up through years of rejection and pain, finally snapped. Or maybe finally woke up. Because I was going to that wedding. Absolutely, I would be there. Just not the way my mother imagined. Not as the ashamed daughter, hiding in the corners, trying not to be noticed. No. I was going to make an entrance. The kind of entrance no one would forget. The kind of entrance that would change everything. Forever. And it all started with Marcus. The man my mother discarded. The man who kept secrets. The man who, without knowing it, was about to become the catalyst for the biggest turnaround our family had ever seen. I picked up my phone again. This time, not to reread my mother's cruel message, but to make a call that would change the course of everything. I dialed Marcus's number. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From something different. anticipation, determination, maybe even a little hope. He answered on the third ring. "Hi, honey. Everything okay?" His voice was warm, concerned. He always knew when something was wrong. I took a deep breath. "Marcus," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Do you remember what we talked about last week? About everything?" There was a pause. "Yes." "Why?" "I need your help. I need you to help me with something. Something big." Another pause. Longer this time. I could almost hear him thinking, connecting the dots. "What happened?" he finally asked. And then I told him. I told him about the text, about the wedding, about years of rejection and pain. I told him everything I had kept inside, everything I had swallowed, all the tears I had held back to maintain some semblance of a functional family. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Marcus said something I will never forget. "It's time," he said calmly. "It's time for some truths to come to light. It's time for your mother to learn that real value doesn't come from bank accounts. And it's time for you to discover exactly who you are, who you've always been, regardless of what anyone has said or thought." Tears streamed down my face. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were different, cleaner, liberating. "Meet me tomorrow," Marcus continued. "There are things you need to know, things that will change everything. And then, together, we're going to your sister's wedding. And we're going to show your family what real value means." I hung up the phone and looked at my mother's message one more time. "Don't come to the wedding. You're too poor." I smiled. For the first time in days, I truly smiled. "Oh, Mom," I whispered to the lit screen. "I'm going, and you have no idea what's coming." Because sometimes the person who breaks your heart is the same one who finally opens your eyes. And sometimes the man everyone discarded is exactly the one who holds the keys to change everything. The storm was coming, and I was about to be the lightning that would illuminate all the carefully constructed lies. But that man, Marcus Almeida, wasn't just someone from the distant past. The family had always painted him as a coward, the man who abandoned his pregnant wife, the irresponsible one who chose career over family. For years, I grew up hearing these stories. Marcus was the villain, the man who didn't have the courage to stay. But the truth, as always, was more complex than the stories told around the dinner table. 3 years after that night at the shelter, the protagonist was different. Not completely healed. Healing is never that linear, but stronger. She had landed a job at a corporate events company. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. She organized conferences, seminars, gala dinners for executives. It was at one of those events that it happened, a business conference at the city's most expensive hotel. The protagonist was checking the speaker's badges when a man approached the registration desk. Impeccable suit, a presence that commanded respect. She looked up from the computer and froze. It was him, Marcus Almeida. But not the Marcus from the faded photographs her mother kept at the bottom of a drawer. This Marcus had graying hair at his temples, lines of expression that spoke of experience, not fatigue. He carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "Good morning," he said, with that voice she had last heard 3 years ago. "I'm here for the panel on business ethics." The protagonist tried to maintain her professional composure. She checked his name on the list. Marcus Almeida, founder and CEO of Almeida and Asociados, keynote speaker. "Yes, Mr. Almeida, your badge is ready." Marcus took the badge but didn't move away. He watched her for a long moment, then his eyes widened slightly. "You," he said softly. "You have her eyes." The protagonist felt her heart race. "Excuse me?" "Your mother. You have exactly her eyes." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that seemed incongruous with his polished appearance. "You're her daughter, aren't you?" The protagonist nodded, unable to find words. My God. Marcus placed the briefcase on the table, as if he needed something to lean on. "You've grown. The last time I saw you, you were 5 years old. You were wearing a yellow dress with daisies, You showed me a drawing you had made a house with a happy family inside. The memory hit the protagonist like a punch. She remembered that day, remembered the dress, remembered drawing that house, hoping the drawing would somehow make everyone stay together. "I remember you," she whispered. Marcus smiled, but it was a sad smile. "You remember the man who left. My family always said you abandoned us." "I know what they said." Marcus glanced around the busy hotel lobby, clearly aware that this was not the place for that conversation. "Look, I know this is strange, but do you have time for coffee after the conference? There are things you deserve to know, things your mother will never tell you." The protagonist should have said no, should have kept her distance, but something in his voice, something genuine, something broken made her agree. "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks from here. 6 o'clock. Marcus nodded. "I'll be there." Those 6 hours dragged on like an eternity. The protagonist could barely focus on work. Her mind kept going back to that yellow dress, to the drawing, to the man who had left. When she finally arrived at the coffee shop, Marcus was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. He had swapped his suit for a casual dress shirt. He seemed more human that way, less intimidating. "Thanks for coming," he said when she sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," the protagonist admitted. "Fair enough." Marcus ordered 2 coffees and then leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "Before anything else, I need you to know, I didn't abandon you. I never wanted to leave you. But you left." "Yes, I did." Marcus took a deep breath. "Your mother and I got married young, very young. I was 22, just finishing business school. She was 20, working as a secretary at her father's company." He paused as the waiter brought the coffees. "At first, it was good. We were happy, as much as possible. But your mother, she had ambitions. Big ambitions, and there was nothing wrong with that. I had dreams too. I wanted to build something, make a difference. So, what went wrong?" Marcus stirred the sugar into his coffee, his eyes distant. "The problem was that our ambitions went in opposite directions. Your mother wanted me to work at her father's company. She saw it as security, stability. I saw it as a prison. Because you wanted to build your own business. Not just that." Marcus looked directly at her. "I wanted to do things the right way. Her family's company. Let's just say there were practices I couldn't support. Fraudulent contracts, bribes, things that troubled my conscience." The protagonist felt something shift inside her. "So you left." "I tried to make it work. For 5 years, I tried. I worked at the company. I closed my eyes to things that made me sick. All because I loved your mother. Because I thought that's what a good husband did." Marcus paused, the pain clear on his face. But then something happened that changed everything. The company was involved in a construction project, a housing complex for low-income families. They used cheap, substandard materials. They cut corners on everything. 6 months after the families moved in, part of the roof of one of the buildings collapsed. An 8-year-old child died. The silence between them was heavy. "I went to your mother," Marcus continued. "I told her I was going to report it, that I couldn't continue to be complicit in that. And she asked me to stay quiet, said it was just an unfortunate accident, that reporting it would destroy her family, would destroy our future. And you didn't stay quiet." "I couldn't." Marcus looked at her with eyes pleading for understanding. "A child had died. Other families were at risk. How could I look at you, my daughter, and teach you about integrity if I didn't have any myself?" The protagonist felt tears starting to form. "So that's why you left." "Your mother gave me an ultimatum. My principles or my family. She said if I reported it, she would make sure I never saw you again. And she followed through on that threat." Marcus cleared his throat, clearly fighting back emotion. "I reported it. I testified against the company. They were fined. Her father lost contracts. And your mother. She cut me completely out of your lives, moved cities, changed her number. When I tried to get in touch, she threatened me with a restraining order." "I didn't know," the protagonist whispered. "How would you know? You were just a child, and I'm sure the version they told you was very different. The protagonist thought about all the stories, all the accusations, the irresponsible man, the absent father. Why are you telling me this now? Marcus smiled sadly. Because you're not a child anymore. Because I saw you at that hotel, working hard, being professional, and I thought, maybe it's time you heard the truth. Maybe you deserve to know that your father didn't abandon you. He chose to do what was right, even knowing the price he would pay. You could have tried to find me when I got older. I tried. Marcus pulled out his phone. He showed her a folder with dozens of emails, all sent to an address the protagonist never knew existed. I wrote to you every year on your birthday. All the messages bounced back as, address not found. Your mother blocked everything. The protagonist looked at those emails, years of unread messages, missed birthdays, a father who hadn't forgotten. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't need to say anything. Marcus put his phone back in his pocket. I just wanted you to know the truth. You deserve to know that you were loved, that you are loved. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of years of misunderstanding hanging between them. Then Marcus said something that would change everything. Look, I know this is a lot to process, but there's something else I need to tell you. He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. I built my company from scratch after I left. It took years, hard work, a lot of sacrifice, but I did it the right way. Today, Almeida and Associates is one of the most respected ethical consulting firms in the country. I know. I saw your name on the list of speakers. Then you know I'm not offering charity when I say this. Marcus leaned forward. Come work with me. Let me teach you the business. Let me show you how to build something the right way. The protagonist blinked, stunned. What? I saw you working today. I saw how you handled people, your organization, your professionalism. You have talent, and more than that, you have something that can't be taught. You have hunger. I recognize it because I had that same hunger at your age. Marcus, I didn't even finish college, and I don't care, he said firmly. I'm not looking for a degree. I'm looking for someone with potential, someone willing to learn, someone who understands what it means to rebuild after losing everything. Something in the way he said those last words hit her deep. He knew. Somehow, he knew about her struggles. How did you... I saw you at the event today. I saw the way you moved. Careful, guarded. Someone who's been broken and learned to protect herself, Marcus said gently. Takes one to know one. Tears finally streamed down the protagonist's face. I don't know if I can do this. You can, and I'll prove it to you. Marcus wrote something on a business card and slid it across the table. This is my personal number. Think about it. When you're ready, call me. The offer has no expiration date. The protagonist looked at the card, a simple piece of paper that somehow felt like it weighed a ton. Why are you doing this? She asked. After all these years, why do you care? Marcus smiled, and this time it was a genuine smile. Because you're my daughter, and because I've lost too much time already. I'm not going to lose the chance to know you now. They talked for 2 more hours in that coffee shop. Marcus told stories about her early years, memories the protagonist had forgotten or never knew. He showed old photos he had kept the protagonist in the park, blowing soap bubbles, the protagonist sleeping in his lap, a family that had existed before everything fell apart. When they finally said goodbye, Marcus hugged her. It was a long, tight hug, the kind that tries to make up for lost years in seconds. Call me, he said when they pulled apart. Please. The protagonist tucked the card into her bag and waved as he walked away. She stood on the sidewalk for a long time afterward, processing everything. The story she had grown up believing was crumbling. The villain was actually a hero. The abandonment was actually sacrifice. And the father she thought didn't care had spent years trying to reach her. It took her 3 days to gather the courage to call. Marcus, it's me. If the offer still stands, I want to try. She could hear the smile in his voice. When can you start? Monday? Monday is perfect. Over the next 3 months, the protagonist's life changed in ways she could have never imagined. Not just her bank account, though the salary at Marcus's firm was 3 times what she made before. Not just her professional skills, though Marcus was a relentless mentor, pushing her to learn faster and think deeper than she thought possible. What changed was who she was. Marcus didn't just teach her about business. He taught her about integrity, about the difference between success and meaning, about how to build something that lasts not just because it's profitable, but because it's true. He took her to client meetings and afterwards would dissect every conversation: what worked, what didn't, why certain words mattered more than others. He made her read books on business ethics, philosophy, psychology. He challenged every assumption she had about success. Anyone can make money, he'd say. The question is, can you make money and still look at yourself in the mirror? Can you build a fortune without destroying your soul in the process? The protagonist absorbed everything. She arrived early and left late. She asked questions. She made mistakes and learned from them. And Marcus was always there, steady, patient, believing in her even when she didn't believe in herself. But it wasn't just about work. Marcus also taught her things no business book could. He taught her that being financially broken didn't mean being broken as a person, that her worth wasn't in how much money she had, but in what she chose to do with the opportunities she was given. He told her about his own hard years after he left her family, how he had slept in the office because he couldn't pay rent, how he had eaten instant noodles for weeks to save money to invest in the business, how he had been ridiculed for choosing ethics over profit. "There were times I thought about giving up," Marcus admitted one night, as they were working late on a proposal. "Times when I thought maybe your mother was right, that maybe integrity was a luxury I couldn't afford." "What kept you going?" Marcus looked at her. "You. I kept thinking that one day, somehow, you would know the truth. And I wanted that when you knew, you could be proud of the man I had become. Not the man I could have been if I had given in." Those words stuck with the protagonist. In a strange twist of fate, the father she thought had abandoned her had actually built an entire life with her in mind. Every decision, every sacrifice, every hard moment, everything had been, in part, for her. And now, finally, they had the chance to rebuild what had been stolen from them. By the end of the 3 months, the protagonist was no longer the same insecure woman who had walked into that office. She walked differently. She spoke differently. She had found something she thought she had lost forever at the hostel: her power. But not the power her mother had chased. Not the power that came from status or money or impressing others. True power. The power that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to compromise. Marcus had given her more than a job. He had given her a mirror. And when she finally looked into it, she saw not the broken woman from the hostel, nor the abandoned daughter of the family narrative. She saw a woman being built, being reformed, being molded into something stronger than she had ever been. What happened in those 3 months didn't just change her bank account. It changed her soul. It changed the way she saw the world. It changed who she was at the deepest level. And that, in the end, was the greatest transformation of all. 3 months. That was all it took. 3 months for everything to change. For the young woman who walked out of that room destroyed, humiliated, rejected by her own mother, to transform into someone completely different. Not just on the outside, but on the inside. And it started on day 1. Marcus didn't waste time with theories or philosophies. He threw the protagonist straight into the deep end. Into the first deal. Into the first investor meeting. Into the first negotiation where millions were at stake. "You're shadowing me today," Marcus said that morning. "You're sitting next to me. You're observing. You're going to learn how real empires are built." And that's exactly what happened. The meeting was with 3 businessmen. Older, experienced men who looked at the protagonist with barely disguised contempt. Just some young woman sitting next to Marcus. Probably an intern. Someone unimportant. But Marcus had other plans. In the middle of the negotiation, he turned to the protagonist and asked, in front of everyone, "What do you think of this proposal?" The silence was absolute. All eyes turned to her, judging, waiting for her to stutter, to show insecurity, to prove she was exactly what they thought, insignificant. But something happened in that moment. The protagonist looked at the numbers on the table, at the projections, at the faces of those men, and she realized something Marcus already knew. They were bluffing. The numbers didn't add up. The proposal was weak, and they knew it. Then she spoke. Not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the cold clarity of someone who finally understood the game. "This proposal makes no sense," she said, pointing to the documents. "You're asking for a majority stake in exchange for capital that doesn't even cover half the company's real value. If Marcus accepts this, he won't be making a deal. He'll be giving away his empire." The silence grew even heavier. The three businessmen exchanged glances. Marcus remained impassive, but there was a glint in his eyes, a glint of approval. And then, one of the businessmen smiled, not with anger, but with respect. "He's right," said the older man. "I think we need to review our offer." That was the moment. The moment everything clicked. When the protagonist realized she didn't need to shout to be heard. She didn't need to beg to have value. She just needed to know her own worth. And Marcus taught her exactly that. In the following days, the lessons intensified. Marcus didn't just show her how to close deals. He revealed the psychology behind every move, the why of every word, the importance of every gesture. "People don't buy products," Marcus would say as they walked through one of his offices. "They buy emotions, status, the promise that their lives will be better. If you understand that, you'll never have to beg for anything again." And the protagonist absorbed every word like a sponge. She learned to read people, to identify when someone was lying, to sense when a negotiation was turning in her favor, to use silence as a weapon. And the results started to show. 2 weeks later, Marcus entrusted her with a smaller negotiation. A client who wanted to invest in one of the secondary projects. Nothing large scale, but enough to test if the lessons had sunk in. The protagonist closed the deal in 30 minutes. She didn't just close it. She secured better terms than expected. She guaranteed clauses that protected Marcus, and she walked out of that room with the respect of people who, weeks before, wouldn't have even known her name. "You have talent," Marcus said later with a discreet smile. "Talent and something more important, hunger. You know what it's like to be at rock bottom, and that makes you dangerous." But it wasn't just about business. Marcus also taught her about appearance, about presence, about how the world judges you before you even open your mouth. "You can have the best idea in the world," he said as he took the protagonist to a luxury tailor shop. "But if you look desperate, no one will take you seriously. Powerful people carry power. And now, you will too." New suits, Italian shoes, a watch that cost more than most people earned in a year. A haircut in a place where even the chair exuded status. It wasn't showing off. It was strategy. And it worked. When the protagonist walked into a room now, people noticed, not because she was screaming for attention, but because she radiated confidence. She knew who she was. And that changed everything. The apartment changed too. Nothing absurd, nothing too flashy, but a place that reflected growth. A space where she could breathe without feeling the weight of rejection. Where every piece of furniture, every detail, was a reminder that she was building something. And while all this was happening, the phone kept ringing. Always the same person. Her mother. The first call came 3 weeks after she was kicked out. "Hi, honey," she said, with that voice trying to sound casual, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't shattered her heart. The protagonist didn't answer immediately. She just listened. "I just wanted to know if you changed your mind about the wedding," she continued. "It would be nice to have you there. You know, family matters. Family." The irony stung. "I'm not going," she replied flatly. "Oh, come on, don't be like that," she insisted. "I know you were upset, but it was just a misunderstanding. You get it, right? I was nervous. Everything was so rushed with the wedding." She hung up. And every week, she called again. Always the same story. Always trying to downplay what she had done. Always waiting for her to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. But she didn't go back. Because something had changed. Marcus noticed this. And one night, While they were dining at a restaurant where the cheapest appetizer cost more than the protagonist's old rent, he asked, "Do you still think about her?" The protagonist hesitated. "Every day," she admitted, "but not in the way I used to." "What do you mean?" "Before, I wanted her to accept me," she said, swirling the wine glass in her hands. "I wanted to prove I deserved to be there, that I was good enough. But now—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Now I realize it was never about me. It was about her own insecurities, about the fear that her new husband would find out she wasn't as perfect as she claimed. And I was the living proof of that." Marcus smiled, not with pity, but with pride. "This is the moment," he said. "The moment you stop seeking approval and start building your own value. Wealth isn't about proving to others that they were wrong. It's about knowing your own worth and never doubting it again." And that was exactly what the protagonist did. Over the following days, she dove deeper, closed more deals, built more connections, earned the respect of people who months earlier wouldn't have even glanced her way. And the money began pouring in, not in small amounts, in sums that made her heart race, in numbers proving everything was changing, that she was rising. But the deepest transformation wasn't external. It was the way she looked at herself in the mirror. Before, she saw someone needing validation, someone begging for a seat at the table. Now she saw a woman building her own table, who didn't need invitations, who didn't depend on approval. And that was more powerful than any amount in her bank account. Then, on a rainy afternoon, 3 months after it all began, the mail brought something unexpected. An elegant envelope, expensive paper, gold lettering. The protagonist opened it cautiously. It was an invitation, not from her mother, but from her stepfather. Or maybe some relative unaware of the situation, someone who still thought she was part of that family. "We invite you to celebrate the union of—" She read the entire invitation, every word, every detail. And then, Marcus appeared at the door. "What is that?" he asked, pointing to the paper. "Wedding invitation," the protagonist replied, her eyes still fixed on the envelope. Marcus crossed his arms, observing. "Are you going?" Silence filled the room. The protagonist folded the invitation slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and looked at Marcus with an expression blending determination with something deeper. Something Marcus recognized immediately. Not revenge, self-affirmation. "I'm not going to prove she was wrong," she said, her voice firm. "I'm going to prove I was right." Marcus smiled. "Then get ready," he said. "Because when you walk into that wedding, you won't be the girl she rejected anymore. You'll be the woman she never imagined you could become." And that's exactly what happened. The following days were for preparation, not just physical, but mental. Marcus intensified the training, the conversations, the teachings. "People like your mother operate on fear," he explained. "They fear being exposed. They fear losing control of the narrative. And when you show up, not as a victim, but as someone who won in spite of them, it breaks all the power they had over you." And the protagonist understood every word, every lesson, every move. Because he wasn't just going to a wedding. He was closing a cycle that began with rejection, humiliation, and pain. But that would end with strength, dignity, and the undeniable proof that he never needed her to be somebody. He always was. He just needed someone to believe it. And Marcus was that someone. But now, the protagonist didn't need anyone anymore. He knew who he was, and he was ready to show the world. She stood there, holding the phone as if it might burn her hand. The message from her mother still glowed on the screen. Every word a sharp blade cutting not just the present, but all the old wounds she had tried to heal. Marcus said nothing for a long moment. He just watched, with that look that seemed to understand everything without words. And then, finally, he spoke. "Are you going?" She looked at him, surprised. "Go? After what she wrote?" "Yes," he said calmly. "Are you going?" She felt anger rising. "Why would I go? To be humiliated again? To prove she was right all along?" Marcus took a step forward, his voice soft but firm. No, you'd go to prove she was wrong. I don't need to prove anything to her. No, he agreed. You don't. But maybe you need to prove something to yourself. The words hit something deep inside her. She looked down at her own hands, hands that had worked so hard, that had held so much pain and so much dreaming at the same time. I don't know if I can, she whispered. Marcus moved closer, his presence comforting. You've already been through things much worse than a family wedding. You built a new life. You became someone not even your mother can recognize anymore. And now she's afraid. Afraid? She looked at him, confused. She's not afraid. She's rejecting me. She's rejecting the version of you she created in her head, Marcus explained. The failed daughter, the family disappointment. She needs you to keep being that person, because if you aren't, then she'll have to admit she was wrong all this time. The words echoed in the silence of the room. She had never thought about it that way, had never considered that her mother's rejection could come from fear, not contempt. And if I go, she said slowly, and she keeps treating me like that? Then you'll know, Marcus replied. You'll know the problem was never you. It was always her. She remained silent for a long moment, feeling the weight of the decision. And then, something changed inside her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was something deeper, more powerful. It was the decision to show up. I'm going, she said finally, her voice firm, but not to prove anything to her, to prove everything to myself. Marcus smiled, that smile that carried so much pride. Then let me help you arrive in a way that reflects who you've become. What do you mean? He looked at her for a moment, as if measuring his words. You're going by helicopter. She blinked. What? My private helicopter, he said simply. We're flying there. Marcus, that's too much. Too much for whom? He asked. For the person your mother thinks you are, or for the person you've actually become? She opened her mouth to answer, but had no words. A helicopter. It was absurd. It was over the top. It was exactly the kind of arrival her mother would never expect. It's not about the helicopter, Marcus continued, his voice gentle but firm. It's about you showing up as your authentic self, successful, confident, unshakable. Your mother said you were too poor to go. Show her that you were never defined by poverty. You were always defined by your strength. She felt tears burning in her eyes. But this time they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of something different, of recognition, of validation. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Marcus smiled. And she did. Over the next few days, something strange began to happen. Her phone started ringing. First, it was her younger brother. Hey, you're going to our cousin's wedding, right? Mom said you probably wouldn't be able to make it. She gripped the phone tighter. She said that? Yeah, something about you being busy with work. But I said you'd never miss a family wedding, am I right? She closed her eyes. Of course. Her mother had rewritten the narrative. It wasn't that she had been rejected. It was that she was too busy to come. I'll be there, she said firmly. Great, it'll be good to see you. How long has it been? 2 years? 3, she corrected silently, but didn't say it out loud. Then it was a cousin, then an aunt. All with the same story. Her mother had said she probably wouldn't come. All surprised when she confirmed her attendance. And with each call, she understood better. This wasn't about a wedding. This wasn't about a text message. This was about years. Years of being the family disappointment. Years of being the daughter who didn't make it. The one who didn't marry well. The one who had no money. The one who had no success. Her mother had spent years building this image of her. And now, that image was about to be destroyed. She was sitting on Marcus's balcony that night, looking at the starry sky when he joined her with 2 cups of tea. Thinking about the wedding? He asked. She nodded. Thinking about my mother. about how she always had a favorite in the family, the one with money, the one with status, and I was never that person. And now? And now I am, she said, but there was sadness in her voice. But not in the way she would value. I didn't do this alone. I did it because you helped me. Marcus placed his hand over hers. Do you think I built my empire alone? Do you think any successful person does everything alone? Strength isn't in not needing help. Strength is in accepting help and turning it into something bigger. She looked at him, and for the first time, she truly understood. She wasn't betraying her journey by accepting Marcus's help. She was honoring her journey by acknowledging that she deserved that help. She never asked if I was too hurt to come, she said softly. She just said I was too poor. I know, Marcus said, and that says much more about her than it does about you. The week passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus insisted on buying her a dress, something elegant but not flashy. You're not going there to compete, he said. You're going there to exist, fully, completely, as you are. And then, finally, the day came. She stood on Marcus's private helipad, the wind making her dress dance around her legs. The helicopter was there, black and gleaming under the morning sun, the blades still stationary but ready. Marcus was beside her, impeccable in his dark suit. He looked at her and smiled. Ready? She looked at the phone in her hand. Her mother's message was still there. She could delete it. She could pretend it had never existed. But she didn't. Instead, she read the words one final time. Better if you don't come. You know how these things are. People with money, designer clothes, you'd feel out of place. And then it hit her. Her mother hadn't said she wasn't welcome. She had said she would feel out of place, as if the problem were her insecurity, not her mother trying to exclude her. Even in rejection, her mother couldn't be honest. Yes, she said finally, putting the phone in her pocket. I'm ready. They climbed into the helicopter. The pilot nodded and began the takeoff preparations. She buckled her seatbelt, feeling her heart beat faster. Marcus looked at her. Are you nervous? Terrified, she admitted. Good, he said. It means this matters. It means you still have hope that things can change. And if they don't? Then you'll know, and knowledge is always better than empty hope. The blades started spinning, slowly at first, then faster and faster. The noise filled the cabin, a steady roar drowning out all other thoughts. And then, smoothly, the helicopter began to rise. She looked out the window, watching the world get smaller beneath them. The streets she had walked when she had nothing. The buildings she had gazed at from afar, dreaming of a different life. Everything becoming more and more distant. She pulled out her phone again, looking at the message one more time. She said I was too poor to come, she murmured, as much to herself as to Marcus. She never asked if I was too hurt. Marcus said nothing. He just reached out and held her hand. They flew in silence for a while, the helicopter slicing through the clear blue sky. Below them, the world kept turning, oblivious to the small revolution happening thousands of feet in the air. She wasn't going to the wedding to get revenge. She wasn't going to prove she had money. She was going to prove to herself that she mattered, that her worth had never been measured by her bank account, that her mother's opinion, however much it hurt, didn't define who she was. She was going to show up, simply show up, as herself, completely, unapologetically. We're arriving, the pilot announced through the headset. She looked out the window and saw the wedding venue below. A huge mansion with perfect gardens, white tents, expensive cars parked in organized rows, people as small as ants, all dressed in their best clothes, all circulating, talking, laughing. And somewhere down there, her mother was greeting guests, flashing her perfect smile, having no idea what was about to happen. No idea that her daughter, the one she had called too poor, was about to land right in the middle of her perfectly planned celebration. The helicopter began to descend, the propellers creating waves in the ornamental lake beside the mansion. She saw heads turning, people stopping mid-conversation, everyone looking up, all watching the black helicopter descending like an impossible bird. Marcus squeezed her hand. "Breathe," he said softly. She breathed. The helicopter touched the ground with a slight bump. The propellers began to slow down. Through the window, she could see people running toward them, curious, confused, fascinated. And there, way in the back, standing at the entrance of the mansion with her mouth open, was her mother. She had no idea what was about to land on her perfectly planned celebration. But she was about to find out. The noise grew louder. It was no longer a distant hum. It was a roar that shook the air, that made the chandeliers in the hall vibrate slightly, that cut off the priest's voice mid-sentence. The bride stopped. The groom frowned. The mother, who was sitting in the front row with a smile of triumph on her lips, turned her head to the side. And then everyone turned. The garden doors were open. The golden afternoon light poured in through them, and against that light, like a growing shadow, a helicopter descended. Slowly, controlled, straight onto the lawn in front of the hall. People stood up. Someone screamed. Cell phone cameras went up. The priest stopped speaking completely. And the mother went pale. Because she recognized that helicopter. She didn't know how. She didn't know why. But something in that moment, in that theatrical descent, in that absurd audacity to interrupt a wedding, told her exactly who was behind it. And she stood up, trembling. The helicopter touched the ground. The propellers were still spinning, kicking up dust and flowers from the garden. The side door opened, and she stepped out. She was flawless. Dark dress, elegant but understated. Hair tied back simply, posture erect, eyes calm, as if arriving by helicopter to a wedding was the most natural thing in the world. The guests exploded into whispers. "Is that her? It can't be. Isn't that the daughter who got kicked out? My God, look at her! Did she come by helicopter?" The protagonist walked across the lawn. Slowly, deliberately, without a hint of fear. Like someone who had every right to be there. And perhaps that was what troubled everyone most. She wasn't seeking revenge. She wasn't challenging anyone. She simply existed. And then a second figure stepped out of the helicopter. And the entire hall froze. Marcus. The man who had been painted as the villain. The man the family blamed for her struggles. The man who had supposedly abandoned her. But now he was there, beside her, impeccably dressed, smiling. The mother took a step back, as if she had been punched. "No," she whispered. "No. No, no." The protagonist walked up the steps of the hall. Marcus followed her. The guests stepped aside, opening a path. Some were filming. Others just stared, open-mouthed. And when she stopped a few meters from her mother, the silence was so heavy you could hear the wind. The mother looked at her, then at Marcus, then back at her. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was thin, trembling. "I said you weren't welcome. I said you shouldn't show up here." The protagonist didn't answer immediately. She just looked around, at the guests, at the relatives, at the bride and groom, paralyzed at the altar, at the chandeliers, at the flowers, at all that ostentation the mother had built to prove to the world that she was important. And then she spoke. Calm, clear. "You told me I was too poor to be here. You never asked if I was too strong to let that stop me." The mother opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You don't have the right to come here with this. With this theater." She pointed to the helicopter. "Do you think this impresses anyone? Do you think money erases what you are? No." The protagonist took a step forward. "But it seems that was all you valued in me." Marcus took a step too. And that was when the mother lost her color completely. "You," she pointed at him, her hand trembling. "You brought him? How dare you bring that man here?" Marcus smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile. It was almost sad. "I came because she asked," he said calmly, "and because I owed her at least that. Shouldn't I?" The mother laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "You owe her nothing. We both know what she was. A burden, a problem." "No." Marcus shook his head. "I thought I knew, but I was wrong." And then he did something no one expected. He looked at the guests, at the family members, at all those shocked faces, and said aloud, "I mentored her for the past 3 years. I helped build the business she has today. And I can say, without a shadow of a doubt, that she is one of the most determined and talented people I have ever met." The hall erupted in murmurs. The mother recoiled, as if the words were physical blows. "No," she whispered. "That's not true. You're lying. You're both lying." "Lying about what?" The protagonist crossed her arms. "About the fact that I survived? About the fact that I built something? About the fact that you were wrong? I wasn't wrong." The mother's voice rose, desperate. "You were a weight. You were a problem. I did what was best for this family." "No." An aunt's voice came from the back of the hall. Elderly, fragile, but firm. "You did what was best for you." The mother spun towards the voice. "Be quiet! You don't know anything!" "I know." The aunt stepped forward. "I knew she was fine. I knew she was thriving. You were the only one who refused to see." Another family member spoke up, then another, and another. "She sent us updates. She asked about the family. She never held a grudge. We knew. You chose not to know." The mother looked around, and for the first time, she realized she was alone. Not because no one loved her, not because she was evil, but because she had built such a high wall around herself, based on pride and fear, that she had forgotten to look to the other side. And when she finally looked, all she saw was the daughter she had cast out, standing there, impeccable, successful. Everything she didn't want her to be. Everything she, deep down, had always been afraid she could be. The protagonist took another step forward, and when she spoke, her voice was soft. There was no anger, no triumph, just exhaustion. "I didn't come here to humiliate you. I came here to stop being ashamed of myself." The words fell like stones into still water. The mother's lips parted, but no sound emerged. The protagonist turned to face the guests, the bride, the groom. "I apologize for the interruption," she said with a slight nod. "It wasn't my intention to ruin anyone's day." And then she turned to leave, and that's when the mother spoke. "Wait." Her voice was broken, small. The protagonist stopped, didn't turn completely, just waited. "Please," the mother whispered, "don't go." And the whole room held its breath, because nobody expected this. Not the mother, not the protagonist, and definitely not the guests, who were now seeing something much more valuable than any wedding. The possibility of reconciliation. Or perhaps something even more complicated. The protagonist slowly turned around. Her eyes met her mother's, and for a long moment, neither spoke. And then the mother said, her voice trembling, I didn't know. I thought that." She stopped, took a deep breath. "I thought you would fail, and when you didn't reach out to me, I thought I was right." The protagonist remained silent for a moment. Then slowly, she took a step forward. "You never asked me how I was," she said softly. "You just assumed." The mother lowered her head, and for the first time in years she looked small, not because of the money, not because of the helicopter, but because finally, after so long, she was looking at what she had done, and at what she had lost. The protagonist looked at Marcus. He gave a slight nod, a silent signal. And then she looked back at her mother. "What happened next," she said, her voice calm, "was not what I expected." Pause. And it wasn't what she expected either. The party continued around them, but the protagonist could barely hear the music. Her heart still racing, her mother's words echoing like a distant, painful echo. Marcus remained by her side, a silent but firm presence, as he had always been. It was then that the mother approached again. This time, without the audience, without the witnesses. Just her eyes red, her hands trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" Her voice was low, almost inaudible beneath the sound of the guests' laughter. "Please, just us two." The protagonist hesitated. Marcus squeezed her hand gently, a gesture that said, "I'm here. You're not alone." They moved away to a side balcony, away from curious glances. The night air was fresh, almost cold. The city glowed in the distance, millions of lights twinkling like fallen stars. The mother wasn't looking at him. She was looking at her own hands, clasped so tightly that her knuckles were white. "I need to tell you something," she began, and her voice was cracked, fragile. "Something I've never told anyone." The protagonist remained silent, waiting. "When I sent you that message, that horrible message saying you weren't welcome at your sister's wedding." She paused, swallowing with difficulty. "I wasn't thinking about you. I was thinking about me." "About you?" "I see you and I see myself. The version of me that was never good enough." The words were pouring out now, as if she had been holding them back for too long. "I grew up with nothing. Absolutely nothing. Food was a luxury. Clothes were hand-me-downs from neighbors. I wore shoes with holes in the soles and pretended it didn't hurt when the stones cut into my feet." The protagonist felt something shift in her chest, an old, familiar ache. "I married your father because he had money. Not because I loved him, because he represented everything I never had: security, status, respect." She finally looked at her, eyes brimming with tears threatening to spill. "But I never felt I deserved it. I always thought someone would find out I was a fraud. A poor girl pretending to be rich. Mom, and when you started to struggle financially, when you lost your job, when you had to sell your things." She shook her head, the tears finally falling. "I saw my old shame. I saw the poverty I had buried so deep. And I couldn't bear it. I couldn't look at you without seeing that girl with holes in her shoes." The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with decades of unspoken pain. "So you rejected me," the protagonist said softly. "Not because I wasn't good enough, but because you never felt good enough." "Yes," the word came out like a sob. "And I know that doesn't justify it. I know it doesn't erase what I did. But I needed you to know that it was never about you being inadequate. It was about me projecting my own inadequacy onto you." The protagonist felt a torrent of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, confusion. How can someone process decades of rejection in a single moment of vulnerability? Marcus appeared at the balcony door, discreet. "Just checking in." The protagonist gave a nod. "Everything's fine." "You know what hurts the most?" the protagonist finally said. "It isn't that you rejected me. It's that you made me believe I deserved to be rejected. That there was something fundamentally wrong with me. I know, and I'll never be able to undo that." "No, you won't." The protagonist took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs. "But I can undo it. I can decide that your shame doesn't become mine, that your patterns stop here, with me." Her mother looked at her with a mix of hope and fear. "I forgive you," the protagonist said, and the words were both freeing and heavy. "Not because what you did was right, not because we'll be a happy family again, but because holding on to this anger is hurting me more than it's hurting you. You forgive me?" Her voice was small, almost childlike. "Yes, but I won't forget, and I won't repeat your mistakes." She turned toward the door. "You raised us believing our worth came from what we owned. I'm going to raise my children, if I have them believing their worth comes from who they are." Marcus was waiting on the other side of the door. When he saw the protagonist's face, he understood immediately. Without a word, he wrapped the protagonist in a hug, not a performative hug for the guests to see. A real, safe hug that said, "You were brave, you were strong, and you are not alone." Inside the hall, the party continued. Her sister danced with her husband, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. The guests were still whispering about the helicopter, about the confrontation, about the family that looked so perfect but harbored so many cracks. The protagonist glanced around one final time. Her stepfather was chatting with other businessmen, probably discussing deals and investments. A few relatives waved, still processing everything they'd witnessed. Her mother remained on the balcony, alone, wiping away tears. "Let's go," the protagonist said to Marcus. "Are you sure? The party isn't over." "I know, but my journey here is." They left discreetly, without dramatic goodbyes, without any more speeches. Just two men walking together toward the makeshift helipad in the garden. The pilot was waiting, reading something on his phone. When he saw them, he waved and started prepping the helicopter. As the blades began to spin, creating a rush of wind that swept her hair back, she looked at the glowing mansion. From the outside, everything appeared perfect. The bright lights, the loud music, the laughter. But she knew the truth. She knew about the cracks beneath the polished surface, the shame hidden beneath expensive designer clothes, the rejection masquerading as concern. The helicopter rose slowly and the mansion grew smaller. Every meter of altitude was emotional distance too, a necessary break. Marcus held her hand. "Are you okay?" The protagonist considered the question carefully. Really thought about it. Was she okay? After years of rejection, of feeling inadequate, of carrying the weight of never being enough? "I'm getting there," she answered honestly. "For the first time, I'm actually getting there." As the helicopter sliced through the night sky, leaving the wedding behind, the protagonist realized something fundamental. She hadn't arrived by helicopter to flaunt wealth. It hadn't been about arrogance or revenge. She had arrived by helicopter because she had finally risen above. Not just financially, but emotionally, spiritually. She had risen above the burden her mother had placed on her shoulders, and now, literally flying above it all, she understood the truth. Her freedom had never depended on her mother's acceptance. Her freedom came the moment she decided to stop asking permission to exist. "You know what I learned today?" the protagonist said, looking at Marcus. "Tell me. That my worth isn't determined by who accepts me. It's determined by who I refuse to let diminish me." Marcus smiled, that knowing, gentle smile the protagonist had come to love. "And you know what else?" the protagonist continued. "Breaking generational patterns starts when one person decides to love themselves unconditionally first. My mother spent her entire life chasing external validation. I won't repeat that mistake." The helicopter flew over the city, lights twinkling like earthly stars. Millions of people down there, each with their own struggles, their own shame, their own generational patterns to break. How many of them were still trapped in cycles of conditional love? How many still believed their worth lay in what they owned, what they achieved, or who approved of them? The protagonist didn't have answers for everyone, but she had an answer for herself. And that night, flying away from the mansion, away from the family that never understood her worth, and alongside the man who always saw her strength, she finally felt free. It wasn't perfect freedom. There was still pain. There were still scars that would take time to heal completely. But it was real freedom. Authentic. Earned. And that, she realized, was worth more than any helicopter. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you weren't enough for the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. You are enough. You always have been. You always will be. And if you're fighting against generational patterns, against inherited shame, against the weight of never being good enough, know this: the cycle breaks when you decide. When you choose to love yourself first, before seeking approval from those who never learned to recognize your worth. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of resilience, truth, and the courage needed to break free from generational cycles. Because healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we collectively decide that we deserve better, that we are more than the shame projected onto us, that our worth comes from within, not from who accepts or rejects us. Your healing journey starts now, and we're here, together, flying towards something better.